Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I am a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on October 29th, 2021 at approximately 12:25 p.m. PST. The world, as we know it, is changing. And I've noticed a lot, like I've been talking about this now for really about the last, I guess about 6 months-ish. But I'm happy to say that I'm seeing more and more people reaching out to each other, regardless of what their connection. And they don't even seem to be talking that much about what their differences are. Okay, yes, the differences come up, but I'm seeing more and more people starting to relax, starting to communicate with each other. And the reality of it is this: I came back to this world, to this lifetime, for one primary reason. And it was a long journey figuring that one out. But I came back to spread to pass one message along. And that is that together we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. Now, of course, it is up to you as individuals to make that happen. I cannot do it on my own. No individual can do it on their own. But all it takes is one person to stand up and start pointing the direction, and for other people to stand up and start following. And don't get me wrong, I do not expect people to look at me and go, oh, you know everything that's going on. I really don't. I'm probably one of the most confused people on the planet, and Lord knows I've stayed away from people on the whole for a lot of reasons. One of the primary ones is I couldn't figure out whether or not I was having trouble dealing with people because I didn't understand them or because I did. And the reason I qualify it that way is I have not been able to connect with a whole lot of people, but I do seem to understand what drives people, as evidenced by the fact I've been doing this work since 1986. It became public knowledge. The last 20 years, well, actually, in all fairness, the last 25 years now, I've been working in the consulting field with the same with the same set of rules, basically. Okay, I've dealt with people on personal issues, business issues, alien interaction, psychic phenomenon, you name it. And I've been at this now, like I said, for what? Well, since 1995, so we're now looking at 25 years. So half my life has been in this business on a professional level. If you don't have any idea what you're doing, you just don't stay with it that long. Now, this does not mean I'm perfect, and I keep telling people, the fact is, I'm not soft-spoken. I do not say things to make other people happy. I've only done it once, where somebody they came right out and asked me, I don't care. They said, I don't care what you tell me. I don't want to know the future. I don't want to know the past. I just want you to help me feel better. And if that means lying to me to make me feel better, then so be it. Well, the way I figured it, that was what he asked for. And bearing in mind, on top of working in this field, okay, as a professional psychic consultant, I bill myself as a spiritual guide. The tools I offer people are the same ones that I personally use in my own life when they apply to me. Okay, and the ones that don't apply to me, I've offered to enough people to get enough feedback on it to know that it's working. Okay, you couple that with the fact that I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons now for, quite literally for 45 years. Okay, and I'm self-published in 5 different genres. In the science fiction, science fantasy genre, I'm actually published and available on authorhouse.com, Amazon, Indigo, Chapters. Okay, and of course, if you look at the list below this video, you'll find a whole pile of ways of getting a hold of me to order directly. Okay, now, you'll also find a list of the different publications I've put together. With this in mind, in order to get your world working the best way possible for you, you're the one that's going to have to be doing it. Okay, people are finally getting the idea that who you worship, what you call them, is not really a relevant concern. What is relevant is how you treat other people, which is why I only promote 3 laws. Be true to yourself first. Do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. And energy out, energy in. If you follow those laws, if we all follow those 3 laws, you will find what I believe you'll find is that this world continues to improve. The people continue to draw closer together and remember things that used to make this world a whole lot happier. There's always been struggle ever since day one. Okay, the reality of it is that this world is not perfect. With life comes death. Comes death. Okay, and there are trials, there are tribulations, but there are also, there are also victories and exaltations. Okay, the trick is to minimize the negative, maximize the positive, and move forward. Now, this said, it's up to you to do that. Now, I understand that a staggering number of you don't really know how to go about that. Okay, and I struggle with it myself. I am not above the rest of you from that standpoint. In all fairness, I'm not above the rest of you from any standpoint, except in some people's cases, I'm taller. Not much. Okay. In order for me to be taller than you, well, that just means you gotta be shorter than 5'7". Well, 5'8", something in there. That seems to fluctuate for me. Okay, but like I said, I came back to pass on one simple message. And that is that working together, we can make this a better world for most people. There will undoubtedly be those that are only happy because they only let themselves be happy by watching other people in pain, or more often than not, causing pain. Okay, now the one task that I've got, the one job that I came back to do, was to pass this simple message on. That'd be the first one. Now, I am not expecting to end up with millions of followers. Okay, that's not my task. In all honesty, a lot of the time when I do these videos, I tend to go back and forth because what seems to happen is I end up talking to myself more often than I care to count. You probably do something along the same lines, you just don't record it. Okay, but nevertheless, whatever you say, whatever you do, that's locked up here. Your memory is not the problem. Many of you think that you have a bad memory because you're told you've got a bad memory. The reality of it is your memory is fine. It's your recall that has complications. And just like riding a bike, if you've been off a bicycle for a long time, you may be rusty when you get back onto it, but you will remember, and that goes for pretty much everything you've done. Okay, now, from my standpoint, that's the one task that I've got. Okay, now needless to say, I'm not one of these people that one talks to about, fashion statements or about how to say something politically correctly. I'm not good at either one. Okay, I know what I'm comfortable in, and that's where that ends. Okay, the second task, the second major project that I've got on the go is this issue of writing. Okay, now I've talked about my books and what have you, and I will do that on a different day. That's not where I'm going with this. Where I am going with this is if you've got a dream, if you've got a project that you've put on hold, if you've got a goal that you really would like to experience, do not worry about whether it's going, do your best not to worry about whether you're going to become world famous at it. Okay. Find a way to look at it and do it for you. Okay. Now, I've heard people that have gone, well, I was trying to write, and I got a story written, and I turned it in, and the potential publisher said it wasn't good enough. Well, from my research, here's what I found from talking to a lot of people. Where it comes to writing specifically, if you've got a manuscript, and you desire to put it on the market, if you turn that manuscript over to 100 publishers, okay, if what I was told is if you get a response from 3 of them at all, you did really well. Okay. Once, if you get 3 that you actually get a response, even if they turn you down, you've done extremely well. And if you actually luck out and get somebody to actually pick up the book and print it, you have gone way overcharged. Okay, you've gone way off the chart as far as odds are. The odds of writing a bestseller are slim to non-existent. But this does not mean you shouldn't do it. Okay, it does mean that the more you desire something, the more effort you're going to have to put into it. And this idea that you can't do it has to go out the window. Okay, now if you look at one of my other segments, called Language, I actually did a video on the word cant and why it is complicated, why it runs into snags. Okay, and why I myself choose not to use it very often at all. Most of the time, if I do say the word can't, like I can't do that, more often than not, I'll stop and go, wait a minute. I could do that, but I'm not going to. Or I could do that, but it's a bad idea. There are very few things in this world that you cannot do. There are many things that I would recommend you don't do. Okay, and far more of them that could be done that are actually illegal, and therefore I really recommend you avoid those. But the idea is very simple. Get a look in your own heart and ask what you're not content with. What have you put on hold that you feel you should have done something with? Now, granted, there are things that you may have desired to do when you were a kid. Okay, when you were a lot younger. And let's say you desired to own your own business by the time you were 20. And you're now 25 and you still haven't got one. Well, clearly, you cannot own your own business by the time you're 20 at that point. But you can still own your own business, your own successful business. But it's up to you to make the effort to make it happen. And I do encourage you to talk to people that have successfully done it themselves. Okay. I came to the conclusion a long time ago that when you get an idea in your head, providing it doesn't break any of the 3 karmic laws, if you can stand up and proudly say, this is what I did, then the odds are pretty good that you should really look at going out and doing it, providing you don't break the 3 karmic laws to start with. And definitely, if it's something you really desire to do, but it is listed as illegal in the society in which you're living, don't do it. I don't know about you, but I do not like the concept of tolerating vertical bar time, as in jail, prison, that sort of thing. Fortunately, people think what they will, and it's not illegal to think whatever. But contrary to what I've heard from many religious groups, thinking about doing something is nowhere near as bad as actually doing it. Because if it were, this world would be in a whole lot, well, in all fairness, if it were as bad as doing it, this world would be non-existent. Because as a role player, as somebody that plays Dungeons and Dragons and lets my imagination get ahead of me on occasion, okay, I've pictured this world coming to an abrupt halt, being blown up. Take a look at an old movie years and years ago called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Okay, now that was somebody's imagination going, here's what happened. And all of a sudden, this, Earth ceased to exist. Okay, so your imagination is given to you for one primary purpose, to run ideas around in it and figure out the safest way without hurting other people to attain what your heart says this is what I desire. Okay, now, in simplest terms, when your heart and your head are in conflict, follow your heart, but use your head to get there. Now, understand, you did not get to the point in life that you're at right now. You didn't get there overnight. Okay, it's going to take you a lot of effort. It's going to take you trial and error in order to change the direction your energy is going. Okay, in order to change the way that your life is progressing. Okay, now I'm not the one to tell you. I think my voice cracked. Oh well. Um, I'm not the one to tell you whether the path you're on is the best path for you. But I am one that, when asked, I can tell you whether the path you're on can be accomplished on the path you're on, and what the most effective way is for you to put the effort, put the focus to make your dreams a reality. Now, to that note, this is just kind of a side note, takes me a little off track. But I've mentioned before, I've racked up something in the neighborhood of about 80,000 clients. Okay, in excess of at this point. But here's the thing. Out of those 80,000 clients, the massive majority, I can explain to you exactly how I came to that conclusion and how I came to the answers I did. How I knew which way your life was going, where the problems in your marriage were, where the problems in the business were. The massive majority of 80,000 have been very easy for me to identify. 80 to 85% of them are a snap to identify. But there have been, I think, about a dozen cases. We're talking 12 out of 80,000. Now, I have no idea offhand what that translates into percentage-wise, but just because I'm sitting here and I'm curious at this point, if I take 12 divided by 80 by 80,000, really? That says 1.5%. Now, don't take my word for it. Do your own calculations. But if I've only had a dozen what I call inexplicable events, okay, that I've come across, that I personally identified, things like pinning down the return of an ex of 10 years, right, down to within a couple of days of when they were going to return. Okay, right out of the blue. Pinning down the pinpoint location of a missing passport in a different city. Pinning down the exact location and depth of an underwater river. I've only done this a dozen times. But if you think about it, if we are looking at 1.5% of the people I've dealt with, okay, that is, to my way of thinking, remarkable. Now, the psychic world is quite frankly, most of it is very easy to explain either by logic or by extrapolation. You can figure out how it was done. Most of it I can explain. Okay, there is some stuff that I go to explain that takes a while to explain it. Okay, like the operation of the OTE drive that starships use for interstellar travel. I'm not trained by Terran standards in regards to science. However, do I understand how it works? The answer is yes. Now, if I take a look at this, I just got to do this. If we go 7.5 billion, so that's million, thousand, hundred. That means now if we take a look at that 1.5% that I personally dealt with and cannot readily explain by logic, by patterning, by extrapolation. Okay, that means you're still looking just on my events alone on this planet. We're looking at only about 750 events that are at this point inexplicable. In easy terms. I mean, I can explain it, but I'm going to have to go into this funny little thing called subquantum mechanics, and I can't explain in Terran terms, in terms by modern education. I can't give you the mathematical formulae. Sorry, that was Stephen Hawking's job and many other phenomenal mathematicians. I understand how it works, but I cannot prove it. Okay, but what I'm getting at is this. No matter what somebody tells you, okay, and it's a pretty simple concept. The people that believe in God, in psychic phenomenon, in aliens and UFOs and that sort of thing, okay, the people that believe in these things, to them, there is no real proof required. They already believe. To those of you that don't believe that these things exist, there is very little likelihood that proof can be provided. Okay, it's very hard to wrap your brain around a lot of the time. Now, I build myself as a spiritual guide because of the fact that I simply point people in the direction that it looks like will work for them. Okay, and the reality is, I don't have to understand what I'm looking at. The person I'm talking to has to understand it. Okay, and for those of you that are dealing with people that are calling themselves Reiki masters, now understanding this particular venue, I'm talking about very much my opinion. Okay, but if somebody claims to be an energy healer and they're insisting they have to have physical contact, that's not energy work. Energy work requires no physical contact as humans understand it. It requires energy, meaning your hands don't have to get any closer than about that far away. Okay, you don't have to have physical contact. I mean, think of it this way. Where it comes to working with energy, where it comes to working with people's chakras, the two most common places for energy to get really jammed up in people are in the heart complex, in the heart center, and in the emotional center, which happens to be in the groin. Now, if I had to have physical contact, understanding that the majority of people, probably as much as a 3-to-1 split. In other words, out of every 4 people, okay, out of every 4 people, 3 of them will be women. Okay, now with that in mind, if I had to put my hand physically on the solar plexus of the people I'm working with, or on the groin, can you picture how little work I would actually be doing, or for that matter, any of us would be doing? This is why I tell people I don't physically have to touch anybody when I'm working in that field. And if you're talking to somebody that tells you that they have to have physical contact to do their energy work, I strongly encourage you to question that. Okay. And to those of you that are worshiping God or following the teachings of a given spiritual guide, okay, and when you're told you have to be inside a church, inside a building of that religion or that faith belief, okay, if you're told you have to be inside that building, you may want to question, because the reality is, if your spiritual guide created everything, you can bet your bottom dollar, regardless of where you are, he's going to hear you, or she is. It won't matter. Call it what you will. Okay. Now, I'm not telling you to take my word for it. All I'm suggesting is that you think about what you're following, because you're the only one. You are the only entity in existence that has control over where your life is going. Yes, you can point the finger at anybody or any superior power that you see as a superior power as what is controlling you, what is making your life miserable, what is doing whatever. You can attribute it to anybody, but the backbone of it is you're the one responsible. You're the one that has to be doing the work. Okay. Now, have I contemplated walking away from this whole thing? Certainly. I had a very long conversation one day regarding the idea of just saying, scrap it, I'm just done. Okay. And I keep getting pulled back to it. So what's happening now is I'm following this path and I'm doing the best I can to put things in order and to give people functional tools to work with. Now, I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube and what have you, where they say, oh, at the end of this video, we'll tell you the secret. Okay, and then at the end of the video, you find out they're not telling you a thing except for, here's a magic pill or a magic powder that you can take to make your life better. Really cute thought. Where it comes to actual scientific medicine, okay, and that doesn't necessarily mean MD. Naturopaths and, that sort of thing work just as well. Okay, but they've also spent a lot more time in controlled, in replicatable programs, making certain that what they're telling you works. Now, myself, I personally don't use much in the way of medication at all. Okay, and coffee I don't call counting as medication. Actually, it was funny. I was told by a nutritionist that because of the weakness of the coffee I drink, basically I'm just drinking straight water with a little bit of flavoring, which realistically coffee and tea are both the same thing. Okay, I just make mine extremely weak. But when you get an idea in your head of something you desire to accomplish, it's time to stand up and go, I'm going to make my life better for me. Okay, that's the critical factor at this point. Make it for you. If your home life is not working well, talk to the person that you're with. Whether it's a common law, a marriage, boyfriend, girlfriend, doesn't matter. Okay, if you're having troubles, be clear. Do not make the mistake of trying to say things so they don't get upset. Okay, as my parents used to put it, if you do something wrong, own up to it. Yes, you may get in trouble for it, but the reality is you'll get more trouble if they find out later that you were lying about it. Okay, but the actions of every individual are purely and solely their own actions, their own responsibility. Communication between two people, from what I've seen, is invariably a 50-50 problem. With that in mind, minimize the negative, maximize the positive. Now, I will be back again tomorrow. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.